Now to this, we've been talking a great deal about the people that have been in the room and those that have not been in the room. And the elephant in the room is the elephant that is not in the room, in the vein of the Trump administration, but more broadly, the United States. And you will know that there have been some diplomatic tensions between Pretoria and Washington, long-standing now, that perhaps started with an executive order in February this year. And the rest is history, as they say. The United States not party to the consensus declaration, the adoption by consensus yesterday. And there's been a bit of a diplomatic standoff leading up to this, right? The United States seeking to be represented at a chargé d'affaires level in terms of the handover ceremony at the very last minute, seeking accreditation here. But that was rejected by the South African organizers, the Department of International Relations, indicating that they will do that handover at an appropriate level because it would be a breach of protocol were the president of South Africa to hand over to a junior diplomat from the United States Embassy, not even at the ambassadorial level, because as we well know, the Donald Trump's nomination, President Donald Trump's nomination, has yet to be confirmed by the United States Senate. Since then, we've heard from Donald Trump's press secretary, Carolyn Levitt, who used choice language to describe South Africa's articulation of that engagement with the United States. President Ramaphosa talking about how he wanted the United States inside the tent rather than outside the tent as part of their long-standing engagement seeking to coalesce the broadest coalition around this declaration. And then there was a choice quote from Carolyn Levitt in terms of what President Ramaphosa had said, quote, the president of South Africa was, quote, running his mouth. We've since had reaction from Minister in the Presidency, Ntshwanti, who had this to say. Let's listen in.
We are bigger than that. We are bigger than that. And President Ramaphosa has demonstrated to the world that he's a leader amongst leaders. He's gotten this G20 Summit to be successful. Brazil had to concede that they innovated the social summit, but we did one better to them. And there's consensus in all the things that are being retabled. We've pushed the African agenda to the top. If it was not because of the sterling leadership of President Ramaphosa, we will not be here. And the other commentary, why should we elevate nothing?
And we give you a wide shot of our location here at the Media Center at Nasrec, a media center that is alongside the main plenary that is ongoing. We're about 2 hours away from President Ramaphosa's closing remarks here at the G20 Leaders Summit, and we'll certainly bring you those closing remarks live. But of course, more to the discussion, Tulasizwe, Minister Ntshwanti saying we're bigger than that, we will rise above it. But I think also demonstrating there a clear frustration by the South Africans as to how the United States has chosen to engage with Pretoria throughout this endeavor.
Yeah, we're bigger than that is the message. And I think it came through as well, Sherwin, in the speech by the president yesterday, without alluding directly to the United States and without even mentioning, options included, talking about the next presidency. That didn't even feature. It just talked about the dignity and integrity and stature of the G20 as the premier forum for global economic cooperation, and saying that we will do everything, nothing should ever detract from that. We will defend that at all costs. So it seems there's a sense of not wanting to center the United States in the conversation. And why should they? Because if you have the 18 sovereign states plus the two country blocks, as a whole, the G20 represents about 85% of global GDP, 2/3 of the world's population, and 75% of global trade. Yes, if with the current administration, because I don't even want to say remove the United States, no, remove the current administration and its attitude and conduct towards the G20, there's still a lot there that needs to move forward.
But also in terms of South Africa's, never mind the multilateral situation, there is also a bilateral ongoing trade negotiation seeking to reduce the 30%. Park Stow, the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Dr. Alistair Reuters, the President's trade advisor, have spent a great deal of time, great deal of emphasis on the U.S. relationship, but we haven't seen the details of where we are in terms of those trade negotiations and what this multilateral process, this diplomatic standoff between Washington and Pretoria, how that might inform the ongoing negotiations. Dr. Mzwanele, Ntshwanti, U.S. comes in. there's going to be a troika. South Africa, the United States, you talk about centering the discussion. The United States will be the center of that discussion. They will lead the process. But you have two bookends that have been party to this process and want to see the development focus and the macroeconomic focus continue hand in glove. How do you see the U.S. presidency developing the process that was undertaken here or impugning that process moving forward?
One, we know that they have announced that they are taking over the presidency. They've also announced there are 3 priorities that they will be focusing on: energy security, all types of energy. We drill. And
drill, baby, drill.
Debt sustainability. This is what is a good one. I'll come back to it. And the market-led, deregulated systems. And so we know what we are going into. But fortunately, in terms of the troika system, you will have the UK, South Africa, and the host, which will be the US. How they have engaged with South Africa this year is quite interesting as a troika. Because then they have also said that they will cut out all the working groups in the Shepherd track, and they'll be left with the finance track, which then means we're not going to talk so much about the developmental challenges and women empowerment and energy transitions, etc. So you will have a thin program, but I mean that's the choice of the presidency. They elevate what their priorities are, and everyone else supports. And understanding South Africa's diplomatic conduct, I think they will engage in good faith with the processes.
So when you talk about debt sustainability, my little bit of understanding is that there's been a lot of opposition into sort of the reformulation of countries' debt commitments by the United States and in institutions like the IMF and the World Bank. What's your reading of how the United States might lead that process?
I think it is also very interesting times, because part of the reason why obviously they probably will put debt sustainability as part of their priorities is because the US has got a huge debt. I think it's about 130% to GDP. And part of that has been linked to the global imbalances, or the balance of payment imbalances, where of course a lot of Asian countries, for instance, hold a lot of US bonds. So I don't know if putting that priority there is to try and confront Asia again, to say liberalize the markets and reduce our deficits in terms of balance of payments, so that the money can come back to the US again. We've been bullied for too much, and we need the capital markets to center again around New York and not have the situation where obviously a lot of people invested in the growing East Asian economies, and that led to a lot of deficit in the US, and hence the debt problem for them now. So I don't know if it's because they want to reform the IMF, the World Bank, and the shareholder systems, and elevating debt problems for low-income countries and middle-income countries. I don't think that's probably the focus, because of course, if that would be the focus, then obviously you would go through the common framework. You would then offer debt standstills. You would expand comparability of treatment. The US is a big creditor. So they would obviously protect their creditors as well. So I think that is not the direction. I think the direction will be more confrontational with the East Asian countries.
Let me pull you back a little bit. Of those 3 priorities that the US has already identified for itself for its presidency, you started with energy security. Unless there's a serious capitulation on the part of the G20 member states, take away South Africa for a moment. Park our views for a moment, but as a collective, unless there's a serious capitulation, we are headed for serious confrontation and perhaps even gridlock on that front. Drill, baby, drill, being the approach that says we have fossil fuels, extract them and use them. That's the approach of the United States. Climate change is a hoax. The renewable energy is a hoax. A line and a paragraph from this declaration here says, we support the implementation of efforts to triple renewable energy capacity globally and double the global average annual rate of energy efficiency improvements globally. That sets it up for serious confrontation on at least one of the 3 priorities, doesn't it?
Certainly. And Tilasisa, these conversations on energy transitions have been very difficult. And of course, then you link it to COP, climate action, because you have to face down and, to deal with the issue of climate. And it's been very difficult. But one of the things we can say is that you've got the Paris Agreement, which is legally binding on countries to take these locksteps to phase out and meet the climate ambitions. And you've got the UNFCCC, which is legally binding on countries to do this. But of course, which I think South Africa has been leading in the global space, is the just energy transitions. So not just to transition and quadruple and quantify the energy, the renewable energy investments, but to say we have to obviously take care of countries which are fossil fuel dependent, but not only just the countries, the communities that have got these people, but that must also be matched with the investment to renewable energy. That's where the challenge is, and that's where the difficulty it is. So you will have that conversation next day under the US. It may still be difficult, and this may still be the narrative that match the ambition with the investments.
The only problem with the legally binding element of the Paris Accord is that in the United States it wasn't adopted by the United States Senate, and so that makes it sort of legally precarious. And subsequently, the United States has withdrawn from Paris, so we can't really sort of use the legal whip to get them into shape. But yeah, they're pulling in different directions, and it's interesting to see where that conversation will go. But in terms of this summit declaration, I wanted to touch on the conversation right now that's ongoing in terms of critical minerals, and we have some insight into what they're talking about because there's a declaration that we can refer to because they adopted on the first day. And I want to read you one paragraph. We welcome the G20 Critical Minerals Framework, which has a voluntary, non-binding, you see, there we go, again, non-binding. This is the problem with multilateralism.
Coalition of the willing.
A coalition of the willing, which means implementation is going to lag, mark my words. Non-binding blueprint, right? To ensure the critical mineral resources become a driver of prosperity and sustainable development. The framework is designed to respond to the urgent need for international cooperation to secure sustainable, transparent, stable and resilient critical mineral value chains that underpin industrialization and sustainable development. Further, it aims to unlock investment in mineral exploration, promote local beneficiation at source, very important, strengthen governance for sustainable mining practices. It fully preserves the sovereign right of mineral-endowed countries to harness their endowments for inclusive economic growth while ensuring economic, social and environmental stewardship, conservation, local community participation key, and supply security. Critical minerals should become a catalyst for value addition and broad-based development rather than just raw material exports. What a wonderful paragraph to read. Really great language there. Well done to the Sherpas. 3 claps.
Thank you.
Now tell me, how are you going to do it?
I think let's start by saying that this was good for South Africa to have put it up, despite the challenges, of course, around the critical mineral value chain and development. One, because the SG of the UN had put a panel to look into how do we harness this.
Run by Ambassador Nozipho Mkhatshwa.
And 2, and then you had the G7 coming up with its framework. And 3, you had a lot of bilateral agreements on critical minerals as well. So you needed global cooperation now because there are issues of overcapacity, there are issues of concentration, and therefore this is going to now affect the critical mineral value chains and supply, where at the time where you've got energy transitions, you've got AI development and technological advances, etc. So you needed this. South Africa has done a lot, if we would follow the Department of Mineral and Petroleum Resources throughout the year, engaging investors for this very idea of beneficiation at source. I think mentioning the agreements, for instance, just from this week with Japan, with the EU, where we are beginning conversation, because another element is not only investment, it's also technological transfer. How do you go? How do you beneficiate at source without the know-how systems of it? So I'm hoping, and given the leadership, not only the money coming in, but the capacity building that is being undertaken by the department. And what we can only hope for is the regional integration of this, where South Africa does not negotiate alone, but goes in as a bloc. Then you increase the power of negotiations and you are able to retain the value addition at source.
And I think that statement should be legally binding.
I'm always fascinated by these conversations, and these are not theoretical for developing nations, the African continent. We have have holes in the ground where extraction happened, and years later, when that mineral is no longer viable to mine, you're left with a hole in the ground. And as we were alluding yesterday, these mounds of soil that you see as you approach this venue in these areas of Soweto speak to that history, and Africa seeking to have a different trajectory this time around on critical and rare earth minerals.
But as Dr. Mzwanele Ntshwanti is making the point, right, the collective nature of how we implement this program as Africans is going to be absolutely key to its success.
Yeah.
And I wonder if Africans are on the same page, African countries, in terms of how we go from here. I guess this meeting that President Ramaphosa is attending in Angola is going to be important in that regard, I think.
Yes. Are they also developing a lot of, like one of the things they wanted this increased fund in exploration, so which means you do it at a regional level. They are beginning to have knowledge depositories for critical mineral deposits as to where they are and what is happening in terms of mining and exploration and then value addition. So there are now seemingly agreements being developed within the regions. For instance, on our region, rich in manganese, rich in cobalt, which you obviously need for this processing.
Doc,
so I think so there will be a good step in that direction.
Doc, we have to go to Ayanda.
But I love the attention to detail here.
It really
Wow.
does. Speaking
I
of
don't feel very
attention to
clever
detail,
right now.
Nickel, manganese, cobalt, there you go. I've mentioned critical minerals.
And rare earths from coal.
Here's your challenge, the rare earths. Say those words.
The group consists of scandium, yttrium, and the 15 lanithides,
Yeah.
cerium, neodymium, dymium, praseodymium, etc. That's a great Twitter or TikTok.
We will all learn
Let's
to
see
say
that on
this.
TikTok.
We will all learn to say this by the time we're done with this conversation.
He
Let's
will
go
learn
on-
to say it in future.